Did you know that Jason would never have gotten the Golden Fleece without the help of Medea? Hello and welcome to World History Encyclopedia. My name is Kelly and today's video is all about the Greek hero Jason and his travels on the Argo. We're going to have a look at Jason's journey with the Argonauts in their search for the Golden Fleece and his romance with Medea. Don't forget, the easiest way to support us is by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and hitting that bell icon for notifications so you don't miss out on any new uploads. World History Encyclopedia is a non-profit organisation and you can find us on Patreon, a brilliant site where you can support our work and receive exclusive benefits in return. Your support helps us create videos twice a week, so make sure to check it out via the pop-up in the top corner of the screen or via the Patreon link down below. Jason is a mythological Greek hero who is best known for his journey with the Argonauts in search for the Golden Fleece. Aboard the ship the Argo, which is where the term Argonauts comes from, Jason and his men travel to Kolchis on the Black Sea from Iolkos in Thessaly to retrieve the Golden Fleece, which is the hide of what was once a flying ram with gold hair, and he gets into a number of adventures on his journey. Jason is aided by Medea, who was made to fall in love with Jason and who used her skills in magic to help him succeed in his quest, and then returns home with him. The journey of Jason may reflect historical expeditions the Mycenaeans made in the 13th century BCE as they travelled and explored lands to the east of the Greek world. There are numerous versions of Jason's story, as there are for much, if not all, of Greek myth, but it's Apollonius of Rhodes Argonautica, written in the 3rd century BCE, that is often referred to as the main version of the story, which is the version this video will summarise. Although parts of his myth are told in Pindar's 4th Pythian ode and Pseudo-Apollodorus's The Library of Greek Mythology. Not to mention the story of Jason and Medea after his quest for the Golden Fleece being the topic of Euripides' tragedy Medea. Taking my lead from you, Phoebus Apollo, I shall commemorate the deeds of men born long ago. King Peleus insisted, so they drove the torty-fitted Argo up through the narrows of the Pontic Sea and past the cobalt-clashing rocks to win the Golden Fleece. This is how the Argonautica starts, invoking Apollo, which is soon followed by an invocation to the Muse to tell the story of Jason, King Peleus, and the Golden Fleece. Jason is the son of Aeson, who is the son of the old king of Iolkos, Cretheus, and his wife Alcimede. However, when Cretheus died, it was Aeson's brother Peleus who took the throne, but not the rightful heir, Jason's father. As king of Iolkos, Peleus had consulted the oracle about his kingdom, and the prophecy he received said that a miserable doom awaited him, and he would be killed by a man with one sandal. Not long after he heard the oracle, Peleus saw Jason walking through the Apollonius River during flood time, and he'd lost one of his sandals to the current of the river, before heading to the feast the king was holding in honour of the god Poseidon. Peleus knew that Jason was the man prophesied to kill him, and so he came up with a plan that he truly hoped would kill Jason either at sea or fighting savages on his journey. For he asked the boy to retrieve the Golden Fleece, guarded by a dragon in the grove of Ares at Kolchis, ruled over by King Aeetes. Jason obeyed and set out to retrieve the Golden Fleece. In order to travel to the Black Sea, Jason needed a ship and a crew. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war strategy, and who was quite fond of Jason, guided Argus in his building of the ship the Argo, and even fitted a magical beam to the keel of the ship made from an oak tree from Dodona. And Jason filled the ship with brave heroes. He was accompanied by men, heroes, and demigods like Orpheus, his uncle Iphicles, Menoetius, Telamon, Argus the boatmaker, Peleus, Meleager, the mighty Heracles, also known as Hercules, Laocoon, and Zetes and Calais, the sons of Boreas, the North Wind. The men elected Jason as their leader on the quest, and then they set sail. On their travels to Kolchis, they had many adventures, which started at Lemnos, where a year before, the women had killed all of the men. The Argonauts came upon the shore of Lemnos, and Hypsipyle, the queen, let the men stay in their harbour, and told the women to give them gifts so they wouldn't enter their city, ask for supplies, and then realize that all the island's men had been killed and then report the women far and wide. Jason entered the city and ended up staying in the palace with his men, all staying with women in the city, apart from Heracles, who wanted to stay with the ship. The men were having fun and forgetting their responsibilities until Heracles reminded them of the task at hand. And after a tearful farewell between Jason and Hypsipyle, Jason boarded the ship, followed by his men, and they set off again. They visited the island of Electra and then headed to Samothrace and crossed the Hellespont. They met the savage earthborn giants, each with 6 arms, on Black Bear Mountain Island. They also met the more civilized Doliones, who dwelled there and were descendants of Poseidon. The Doliones and the Argonauts actually ended up fighting each other, and the king of the Doliones ended up being killed. After mourning the dead king and then stiff winds preventing the heroes from leaving for 12 days and nights, on the 13th night, the seer Mopsus saw an omen and established the cult of Rhea. Then the weather finally changed and the heroes were able to set off again. They came ashore at the delta of the Chios River in modern-day Turkey, and here one of the men, Hylas, was seduced by a water nymph, and Heracles and Polyphemus, not the Cyclops, who searched for him, ended up being accidentally abandoned. Next, they met Amycus, who refused to let visitors leave his region until they fought him in a boxing match. But this time, he was defeated and killed by the Argonaut Polydeuces. Next, they stopped at Thynia, where they met Phineus, who had been cursed by Zeus to be old and blind because of his incredible skill of prophecy, and the fact that he let slip a couple of divine secrets. He was also cursed to not be able to enjoy the banquets the locals heaped at his house, because the Harpies would always sweep in and eat it all. So the heroes helped Phineus with the sons of Boreas, who drove off the Harpies. In thanks, Phineus told the men of the safest route to Kolchis and the best way through the clashing rocks. With the help of Athena, Tiphys, the helmsman of the Argo, sailed safely through the clashing rocks, the modern-day Bosporus, where the Greeks believed rocks were clashing together to crush passing ships. Once they arrived in the Black Sea, they rowed up to a deserted island called Thynias, where they could see Apollo flying overhead, and his footsteps shook the island, and so naturally they dedicated the place to Phoebus, god of dawn, and built a shrine to him. They passed the river Acheron, which was one of the entrances to Hades, and then it was to the river Thermodon, a turbulent river like no other. The Argonauts could have stayed a while at the harbour here, but it was the land of the Amazons, a warlike race of women who claimed descent from the god Ares and the nymph Harmonia. So if a battle did occur, the Argonauts surely would have lost many men. So they decided not to linger or give the Amazons time to get ready for a battle. They sailed to the deserted island of Ares, where the Amazons had built a temple to the war god. And here, Jason and his men found 4 shipwrecked survivors, the sons of Phrixus and the grandsons of Aeetes. Phrixus was a young boy who was saved by the ram with the golden fleece, Chrysomalus. And it was Phrixus who then sacrificed the ram after he was delivered safely to Kolchis. And so Jason and his men invited the 4 newcomers into the Argo. They set sail once again and finally arrived at Kolchis. We are now at book 3 of the Argonautica, and this is where the Golden Fleece actually comes into the story. At the beginning of this book, Erato, the muse of love poetry, is invoked to help tell the next part of the story. Athena and Hera were plotting on how to make sure Jason succeeded in his trials, and so they headed off to visit their fellow Olympian goddess Aphrodite. They asked the goddess of love if her son Eros wouldn't mind helping them out by striking Aeetes' daughter Medea with an arrow to make her fall in love with Jason to ensure she helps him in his tasks. This she does, and when Jason arrives at Kolchis and meets Medea, she was struck with an arrow and fell in love with the young hero. When Jason asked Aeetes for the Golden Fleece, he of course didn't want to hand it over, and tells him that if he is able to plough the plains of Ares with oxen that breathe fire, then sow some dragon teeth, and then fight the men, known as Spartoi, that spring up from the ground where the teeth were planted, he will give him the Golden Fleece. Jason accepted these tasks, and Medea made sure he succeeded by giving him a potion that made him invulnerable to both fire and steel, since she was a priestess of Hecate and somewhat of a sorceress. And Jason promised to make her his wife. But even after he succeeded in all three tasks, Aeetes still refused to hand over the fleece. Since Aeetes wouldn't give the fleece over, Jason decided to steal it, again with the help of Medea. Medea used a spell to put the Colchian dragon guarding the fleece in the Grove of Ares to sleep, so Jason could safely remove it, and then the two of them, with the fleece, fled to the Argo and left Kolchis. It's not that easy an escape though, and the Argo was pursued by two Colchian fleets, with Medea's half-brother Apsyrtus heading one of the fleets. In order to get away alive, Medea lured her half-brother into a trap, and Jason killed him and dismembered his body. For this act, Zeus cursed the Argonauts and caused their ship to wander the ocean for a long, long time. The Argo was blown north to the river Epidanus and then to the Sardinian Sea on the western side of Italy, where Jason, Medea, and the crew met Circe in Aea, who absolved them of their blood guilt. On their long travels home, very reminiscent to the wanderings of Odysseus and later on Aeneas, the Argo passed the Sirens, they were saved by the Nereids at the Wandering Rocks, and they ended up at Drepane on the western coast of Greece. Here they were met by the other Colchian fleet, and King Alcinous and Queen Arete of Drepane say that they will give Medea back to the Colchian fleet unless she was a married woman. And so Jason and Medea got married. But the Argonauts still couldn't return home, and they were blown off course again to a sandbank off Lydia called Syrtis. And after carrying the Argo on their shoulders for just shy of 2 weeks, they ended up in the Garden of the Hesperides and at Lake Triton. The Argonauta ends with them not ending up back at Iolkos like you'd think, but visiting the island of Anaphe and then Aegina. The end of Jason's tale can be found in Pseudo-Apollodorus' The Library of Greek Mythology, where it tells us that at Iolkos, Peleus had come to the conclusion that the Argonauts would never return, and decided that his brother Aeson, Jason's father, had to die. Aeson asked if he could take his own life, which he does by swallowing bull's blood. At this, Jason's mother cursed Peleus and hanged herself, leaving her young son Promachus, who was killed by Peleus. Jason delivered the Golden Fleece and then left without avenging the deaths of his family. He sailed to Isthmus and dedicated the Argo to Poseidon, and then conferred with Medea on how to make Peleus pay. Medea headed to the palace of Peleus and convinced his daughters that if they cut him up and boiled him, his youth would return. And then proved it could happen by cutting up a ram and transforming it into a lamb after boiling it. So Peleus' daughters did so, and they killed their father, and as a result, Jason and Medea were banished from the land of Iolkos. So Jason and Medea headed to Corinth and lived there happily for 10 years, with Medea giving Jason 2 children. After 10 years though, the king of Corinth, Creon, gave his daughter Glauce to Jason in marriage, and so he divorced Medea and married the princess instead. For this disrespect, Medea killed Glauce and the king with a poisoned robe, and then killed her own children before flying away on the sun chariot pulled by winged dragons, leaving Jason all alone. Would you consider Jason a hero? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our new videos every Tuesday and Friday. This video was brought to you by World History Encyclopedia. For more great articles and interactive content, head to our website via the link below. If you like my sweater, you can find this design and a bunch more in our shop at worldhistory.store, or you can find the link for it down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you soon with another video.